Okay. Okay, so I think we can get started here. First off, thank you everyone for your interest in the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. We're really pleased to be talking to you about this initiative today. My name is Matt Buckman. I should rename myself because I don't have the same last name twice. I'm a senior director here at the Canadian Urban Institute based out of Toronto, and I'm the project lead for what we're here to talk to you about today, the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. First, this webinar will be conducted in English. If you are a French speaker and would prefer to have your questions answered in French, please feel free to use the chat. We do have our communications coordinator, Eva, is our French speaker, and we'll be able to respond to you in French. And we're also happy following the session to provide more information on the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service in French. So we're happy to follow up with you following this session. Second, we want this to be an interactive session, so we'll go through a couple presentations on the service generally. We have Lala from the municipality of Temagami joining us to speak about her experience joining onto the service, and then we have Shane from Stantec speaking to the types of services and expertise you may be able to benefit from through the roster. And following that, we'll have a Q&A session. So I would encourage you to be camera on from the get-go. And when we get to the Q&A session, I'll do another call for cameras on. We want to be able to answer questions about the program, but also hear about your experiences in managing climate change and the impacts of extreme weather events on infrastructure. That's ultimately what this program is about. And finally, as we're going along, feel free to use the chat function to ask questions. If you're worried you're going to lose track of the question you had on your mind, throw it in the chat, and we'll keep track of it and make sure it gets answered. Okay, so with that, and to bring the webinar into order, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. The Canadian Urban Institute's work happens across Turtle Island, which has traditionally been and is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Today, I'm joining this session from Takaranto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Takaranto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I'm sorry if you're seeing some other things on my screen there. Okay, so jumping in, I'm going to start with just an overview of the program. And actually, before I do that, maybe I'll give my colleague Sadhu an opportunity to introduce himself before I jump in. Sadhu is my co-conspirator on this program. Sadhu.
Hi, everybody. From sunny Victoria, British Columbia, saying hello, and happy to be here with you. Thanks for taking time to learn more about this program. I am one of the climate co-leads, and I focus on the western part of the country on this, and so I might have talked to some of you. And before that, I was city manager in the city of Vancouver and of city of Chicago. So I've been in municipal government, mostly bigger cities. So talking to so many of you about what you're working on in smaller communities has been really enlightening and great to see the kind of leadership that's stepping forward. So nice to meet you and look forward to participating today. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Sadhu. Okay, so jumping right in, what we're going to go over, so I'll do the overview of the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. Lala will provide us a project highlight in Temagami, and we'll highlight one of our most keen experts, one of the first ones in when the doors open with Stantec, and then we'll go into a question and answer period. First, just a little bit about the Canadian Urban Institute for those that aren't familiar. The Canadian Urban Institute is a national nonprofit and charitable organization We work coast to coast to coast, and we focus largely on initiatives that focus on hyper-local urban contexts. So we focus on delivering programs, policy, think pieces to communities that ultimately use those resources to solve problems that are pressing to them. We have a number of platforms, including City Talk and an annual summit that brings together policymakers, urban professionals, civic and business leaders to discuss the major issues that they're facing today. So getting into the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. The Climate Ready Infrastructure Service is intended to connect local governments with populations of around 30,000 and below with climate and infrastructure experts. The idea is that by connecting an infrastructure expert with a smaller municipality and working on a real infrastructure project that's on the go, that municipality will be better able to make their projects more climate resilient, and ideally take those lessons to many other projects in the future. So we provide access to expert advice, and we ensure that projects have a climate resilient lens embedded into them, with the goal of making them lasting and future-proofed. We are not alone. This is a 4-year initiative funded by the Government of Canada, and the Canadian Urban Institute is administering the program. This all falls under the Climate Toolkit for Housing and Infrastructure umbrella, delivered by Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada, formerly Infrastructure Canada. All of it is aligned with Canada's National Adaptation Strategy and the 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan. The two other resources that are available to local governments are the help desk, which is a service line staffed by Housing, Infrastructure, Communities Canada staff people. And there you're able to contact someone and get access to navigation and support. So for example, if you're filling out a grant application for HICC and there's a climate lens component, which I believe all Infrastructure Canada applications have now, you'd be able to contact them and they might be able to redirect you to resources, including us, to help you. The second is Climate Insight. This is a tool, the one-to-many resource delivered by ICLEI Canada. This tool is a suite of resources, case studies, and standards that local governments could employ on their projects to make more climate resilient. It's a very cool tool, climateinsights.ca. I would recommend you go to it. You basically fill out a couple short questions about your municipality and the projects that you're working on, and it will give you a list of case studies, resources, and things to consider. So highly recommend you check that out. Our service, our goal is ultimately about capacity building. We want to work with smaller communities on real projects and support them in building in a climate resilient lens in the long term. We know that many small communities don't have a lot of resources and often are short-staffed, and so we can help take your projects a little bit further down the field and make them more resilient. Our vision is small communities across Canada implementing high-value local infrastructure projects. We know that dollars are scarce, so where you can plan for extreme weather events that you don't have to go back and redo the project, I think that's ideal. So a couple key program features. For local governments, no cost to participate. We manage the contractual relationship with the expert, so there's no need for a municipality to enter into a lengthy procurement process. We handle all of that for you, and then we would agree on a scope of work with the expert and manage the invoicing payment mechanism. So our goal is that local governments benefit from the expertise and don't have to worry about the back-end administration. That's our job. Second, expert support and guidance. So we can really come in at any stage of the project with any type of expertise. And really, that's also the flexible customer service component. We can really come in at any stage of the project as long as it's before tendering. And in fact, the earlier, the better. And I think where there's projects that you have, you just haven't been able to get a little bit further down the field, we can help with that. Some example projects, just to give you an idea of what these experts are actually doing. They won't be able to provide anything like detailed design, but they will help you with options analysis and provide you a couple options for you to consider in your project that would make it more resilient. So to that end, a couple example projects, community in the Yukon looking to construct a new aquatic center, seeking expert guidance on energy efficiency and sustainability. Through our service, we'd be able to connect them with an expert to advise on options, including considering things like geothermal that might be able to optimize buildings' energy performance. Another one, municipality in Ontario, looking at retrofitting their wastewater treatment plant to be more energy efficient. Our expert would be able to help them do a baseline study, set some GHG reduction targets, and provide options on how to meet them through upgrades of the facility. And another one, town in British Columbia is looking to do a climate hazard analysis on their water distribution system. So we'd be able to provide an expert that will provide options to address hazards and risks in the delivery of that project. So one thing you'll see in the examples of these projects, they range from mitigation, reducing emissions, efficiency, to adaptation. And I think that brings us is a good segue to our next slide, which is the eligibility. So we're looking for communities with a population of around 30,000 and below. This number is flexible. So if your town is above, or if you're a county or a region, reach out to us. We're happy to find a way to work with you. So it is flexible. The second piece is the type of infrastructure project. So really, it can be any asset class as long as it's owned and managed by the municipality. Water systems, facilities, bridges, parks and trails, nature-based solutions or infrastructure, all of that would be eligible for this service. And then finally, all we look for is that the project is included in a multi-year work plan. Doesn't necessarily have to be a capital plan. I know we say capital plan here, but needs to have some element of council approval or it's included in a multi-year work plan. This just lets us know that it's a real project that's on the books that has some prioritization behind it. And if you have a project that's like right before those stages, also still feel free to reach out to us. Of the experts that we have, you'll be hearing from one of them today. We have 80 plus experts from across Canada. We have a range of expertise from climate science to engineering, architecture, including the softer side related to climate equity and how best to incorporate, community and stakeholder engagement into your project. We have a strength, I would say, at this stage on water-related expertise in buildings and facilities. And for experts that might be on this call wondering, the first intake period closed at the end of December. We will be doing another intake period closer to the end of this quarter. So I would encourage you to sign up for notifications on our website, and you'll be able to stay updated there. So how does it work? It's intended to be very simple. We want it to be very low barrier to entry. We avoid using words like application. It's a very simple submission form that we want to make it like you're filling out a form to set up an appointment to change your tires. So really, we just ask for some basic information about your town and your project. Once you submit that, we have an intake meeting with you to get a better sense of the type of expertise that you might benefit from. Then through our roster, we identify a match and draft a scope of work for the project. And then once we have an agreed upon expert and agreed upon scope of work, we sign off on a work order and you're underway starting to work with that expert. And that form can be found at climatereadycanada.ca. We have rolling intake. So don't be scared by this January 31st deadline. You can continue applying well through that. That's really just for us to be able to manage our own internal workflow. So it is a rolling intake and would encourage you to apply as soon as possible. So thank you very much. And with that, I will pass it to Lala to speak to her experience with us. Lala.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm the CAO treasurer of the municipality of Temagami. I just moved north in the middle of the summer, so I'm new to Ontario. And I think it was about 1 month ago that our mayor sent us this link for the Climate Ready application. And when I logged in, I put 3 requests about the project that we need a study. We are a small municipality population-wise, but our coverage area is vast. Our infrastructure is old, and considering the low threshold of our tax levy, we cannot raise enough money for replacing our infrastructure. So it's one of the biggest problems for us to handle our replacement by our own money. And from the other side, for the funding through the government, they are looking for the shovel-ready projects with a very specific information, mostly with a very extensive feasibility study supported by the engineering report that, again, it needs a resource allocation that is really hard for the smaller municipality like us. And when this funding application and this support was available, when I applied for this kind of opportunity, I think it was less than 3 or 4 days, I received an email from the team and we had our initial meeting. And after I think a lengthy, maybe 1 or 1.5 hour conversation, we reached on a kind of common ground about 3 areas of the focus on our infrastructure that the institute can help us to do our feasibility studies and provide us with the technical information and documentation that can support us to apply for the funding that is impacting the municipality of Temagami in the area of the infrastructure that is going to mitigate the climate risk and also decrease the footprint on climate change. So after we concluded our discussion, maybe less than a few days, I had the final result as a recommendation for the council consideration. So we had 3 projects with a kind of very short summary that what will be the project, what is a kind of topic they are going to help us to review, and I brought it to the council attention. The council, according to our priority and our goal and the capital budget that we have, they approved the priority for our budget that the first one is kind of making our water and wastewater treatment more efficient and less dependent on kind of fossil fuel. So it was the first priority, and we informed our point of contact regarding that. And now we have passed the stage 1 because we received our first scope of work, and we have reviewed this scope of work internally with my team, and we send our feedback rating for the second review, because our goal is to make sure that we can use this document for applying for municipal green fund, and the team is working with us to provide the technical information and supporting document that we can do so. And it's a kind of blessing for us because we are small, and any kind of help will help us to get more funding to replace or support our aging infrastructure and mitigate climate impact on our vast municipality.
Thank you so much, Lala. Really appreciate you giving the overview of your experience. And for those on the call, Lala and Temagami were one of the first in the door. And so just wanted to highlight her project and the work that Temagami is doing. I think it's the intention of this initiative is that we can help you take your projects a little further down the field, and ideally you can use these resources to strengthen your grant applications, like into the Green Municipal Fund or through HICC. I will also just say that working with Lala, we're able to, if you don't have the perfect project in mind, you know, give us a short list or even a long list of the projects that you think you'd be able to use this service for, and we're happy to meet with you and sit down and figure out what the right project is, or even if we can bundle projects in your municipality under one scope of work. So that's the beauty of this program. We have lots of flexibility in how we service municipalities and in terms of the type of expertise we're able to provide. So thank you, Lala, and we're very much looking forward to continuing to work with you on that project.
Thank you.
I'll now pass it to Shane from Stantec. Similarly, Stantec was one of the first in the door, and I just wanted to provide you with an overview of the type of expertise that you might be able to benefit from through the roster. So Shane, over to you.
Thanks very much. Just confirming audio, and you can see my screen okay?
All clear. Looks good.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Shane O'Hanlon. I'm joining you from Vancouver, BC. And yeah, very excited to be a part of this group and the opportunity, hopefully, to help any of you out with your projects. Just a brief overview on our company, Stantec, with whom I work. Generally, the services that Stantec provide, what I think makes our company unique in terms of the climate science expertise that we have in-house, and some information generally on some projects that I thought might be applicable to this audience. So Stantec is a global firm, but we have Canadian roots. I think that's important to mention. Stantec was founded in Edmonton, and it was a one-man operation in the beginning in 1954, and now we are 32,000 people across the world. We have about 9,000 staff in Canada, and what I find really interesting about the fact that we are now a global firm is that, I'll use an example, we were working on a water resiliency project years ago with the city of New Westminster, and during that project, part of consideration was seismic resilience, and so it was very easy for us to pick up the phone with our colleagues in Christchurch shortly after their earthquake, or I think it was a year or two after. So, lessons learned in trying to understand, hey, if we're going to be making these sorts of recommendations to our clients on the West Coast of Canada, what, have you learned now that you've gone through the process and event itself? So that was just an example of, I know we like to really tailor our solutions, obviously with local knowledge and context, but sometimes it's really great to be able to expand that scale and learn from the lessons of others around the globe. So that has been definitely one of, I'd say, key highlights and benefits of having a firm with 450 locations worldwide, and still a very strong presence in Canada. 2 slides here just on general services. So between kind of our business lines and sectors and services that we offer. So many folks may know Stantec in terms of engineering and design work as it relates to buildings and transportation. So we offer all of those services relates to engineering, architecture, design, and such. And I know that the projects as part of CRIS don't include specific design, but obviously the fact that we have engineers and designers who've been through that whole process, who've worked on thousands of projects, the lessons learned, what we can distill in terms of, hey, this is, I think, a technology or solution or an idea that you might want to explore for your community. They're taking from decades of knowledge and experience there. I think we're good to send these slides around after, so I'm not going to list off all of these, but just again giving you a sense of all of the work and expertise that we can draw upon. Again, in the water, community development, energy and resources are the other key service areas that we can support. So if you have a project in mind that falls under any of these, so between buildings, transportation, environmental services, community development, water, energy and resources, mining and others, we cover it all. What makes us different, I believe, is that at Stantec, we have an in-house team of climate scientists. And so that's part of the team that I'm on. And so we have engineers, planners, and environmental scientists in that growing team. We're coming close to 30 people now. And so that team of 30 is in Canada. And so we work with and across the various disciplines and services to support them and our clients with understanding how the science and the trends as it relates to climate change are changing. So we can, because of that in-house expertise, we're not relying on higher level broadly scaled data. We're able to actually drill down and get very specific climate data for your region for a 10 by 10 kilometer grid cell, essentially. So that ability to manipulate the data so that we can understand it better, to then use that with our designers to go, okay, let's really look at the difference in extreme heat for your community, as opposed to using larger scale public models. And so that's something that's, I'd say quite different. I would say as part of our team also, we have our hands and brains in many, I'd say, projects across the country as it relates to, developing standards, contributing to task forces. So we've been involved with the development of the provincial climate resilience standards and framework for public sector buildings, been involved with many iterations of the PIVC protocol. Myself and colleagues, we teach across various courses in Canada. So yeah, we're really excited that we get to contribute to projects like this and to the general kind of working knowledge of climate science and climate resilience work in Canada. And a big focus of that, of course, being low carbon resiliency. So how can we not contribute to the problem while trying to adapt to it? To give you a sense of the hazards that we deal with in our work, so that climate scientists and facilitators on our team will help explore with you what are your climate risks, so impacts, then going through a risk assessment and then helping to prioritize using that risk assessment. But what then is really useful for us is, okay, we've come up against a specific hazard, we've looked at the trends, now we can go and bring in, we know what our high risk hazards are, we can go and bring in the relevant subject matter experts. So then that's where we'd bring in, say, the geotechnical engineer or the a flood expert, essentially somebody who's worked on the design elements to better understand and dive deeper on any specific hazard. So that's something that I enjoy about our work, because we always get to nerd out on that. We do a lot of work as well in northern Canada. I just came back from negative 35 degrees in Yellowknife last week. We were working with them on the climate action plan. We're also looking at, we'll get to in a moment, work with the government of Northwest Territories on their housing project. So 2 projects I'll just raise as an example. So we finished last year with Metro Vancouver, a climate vulnerability assessment across their portfolio, recognizing, of course, that this program is geared towards smaller communities. I mentioned that higher level overarching program because, of course, it helped us understand, at a regional scale, what we need to consider for systems that might tie in, but then we have carried out countless smaller systems, so either climate lens assessments on smaller water treatment plants or wastewater treatment plants. So we work at all scales, from portfolios and regions down to the individual assets themselves. Similarly, we're now working on a project with the government of Northwest Territories, their housing. And so we're considering a whole suite of assets and asset classes within that, carrying out a portfolio level assessment, and then diving deep to understand various hazards and come up with adaptation measures that are, implementable and actionable for government. So I'll leave you with some contact information for myself. I also have a colleague, you might know his name, Dr. Norman Shippey, delivers, various courses related to climate risk also. But yeah, very excited that the opportunity to get to support you, and very, as you said, keen, as Matt pointed out, when we saw this opportunity to register. Our team were all over it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shane. Firms like Stantec and other large firms bring so much expertise and provide us with a huge base to draw from for projects. And I would also just highlight that of the 80 plus experts we also have very specialized academics on the roster, sole proprietorships. It's all types of expertise that we'd be able to draw from that would be able to meet your needs. So thank you so much, Shane, for being able to join and sharing the work you've done and the work that I hope we can have you continue to do through the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that, now we will go into the interactive fun part. We would love to hear from you. We're happy to take your questions. I might throw out a bit of an icebreaker question. As we talk about this initiative throughout across the country, we're learning that the framing of planning for climate change isn't always helpful, because in many communities it's already hit you. You're feeling it throughout your infrastructure. So I would love to hear what municipalities have already experienced from extreme weather events, and how climate's already impacting your communities and your infrastructure. So who would like to start? What's an extreme weather event that impacted a project that totally changed the way you were thinking about delivering services in your municipality?
Well, Matt, I'll jump in on that one since
Thanks,
no one
Sadu.
else has jumped, just as an icebreaker. The city of Vancouver, when I was city manager there, with all the fires, we were having really, really, really poor air quality, which is having a big health impact. And that was a real wake-up call for us, because we had always thought we had great air quality. So we really started to think about libraries and community centers. And we had thought about those places as places of refuge in the cold, as like warming shelters during emergencies. But all of a sudden, we started to really think about how we could add air infiltration and improve air quality in those places, so people could go there and have a place where they could cool down, but also have air that was filtered. So that was a bit of an eye opener for us. It wasn't a flood or a fire in our own community, but it was air quality that was impacting how people might use our facilities and what our facilities might need to do in the future.
Awesome.
All right, you owe me one. I broke the ice there. So anyone else, anyone experiencing flooding? A lot of the folks that we've been talking to across country are seeing riverbank erosion seems to be a thing that's really having more impact across the country. That's kind of a new phenomenon, or more extreme than in the past. But others have any other things that they're experiencing? Feel free to jump in. You don't need to raise your hand or anything. It's open.
I'll jump in.
Great.
So my name is Jason Wallace. I'm the manager of municipal projects at the Village of Cumberland on Vancouver Island.
Oh, I love Cumberland.
So one of the challenges we're finding is that creek erosion is the one that we've been kind of talking a lot about this way, is with some of the infrastructure we have in place, making sure that it's not having significant negative impact on the creeks and the spillways and other areas around. So definitely one of those challenges that we're seeing with a lot of the larger storms. You know, we had a conversation with a consultant the other day who said, you know, at this point, the 1 in 100 level storm events are more like a 1 in 5. So it's becoming just one of those situations where, especially here, we get the heavy snow in the wintertime at times, and then you get heavy rain on that. It creates a pretty significant influx of water through our creeks and our rivers. That's starting to definitely be an item we want to be watching closely.
And do you?
Thanks, Jason. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Matt.
no,
Sorry.
I'm just going to do a bit of a follow-up. I mean, do you already have you know, streams of work underway, no pun intended, to shore them up?
That's one of the projects we're working on right now, that we're just kind of in the preliminary part. That's what we're likely going to be putting forward as part of this setup, is
Yeah,
trying to figure out kind of the best way to deal with that. So
yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, we've talked to some communities that are dealing with that erosion, and they're seeing municipal buildings that are kind of threatened, works yards, cemeteries that are dealing with that are kind of being impacted by the erosion. So it's definitely something that seems to be a growing concern across the country. So thanks for raising that, Jason. We're going to do a field trip to Cumberland, clearly.
sounds great.
Yeah, look forward to meeting you.
I might call on someone. Ruth Ann, we haven't met. I know you're from the town of Oxford. You've recently submitted into the service. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about the project that you're working on in Oxford.
Okay, hi, I'm Ruth Ann Brookins. I'm from the eastern part of the country, a very small town. We're talking 1,200 people in Cumberland County, actually. So it's Cumberland on the other end of the country. And we do have some very aging infrastructure for our water. We have 3 rivers that join us here in Oxford, and we have been subject to severe floods here in the past. Our main street is in desperate condition, pave-wise, as well as we need to replace the water main. And so we'd like to do it in a climate-friendly way to avoid any future problems with flooding and that sort of thing. And again, we also desperately need funding to even think about doing this project. We have a very small tax base. We recently come across another project that may even have to prioritize ahead of this one, although this is our main street and we'd really like to do it, our next project, do that one in this year or next year at the latest. But we have had inspections done on a reservoir that we have here. I have a hard time with that word, so I call it a water tank. So anyway, we've been advised to replace it as soon as possible. I know it's been expired, and so another big project that we're having difficulty funding, as well as, you know, where to go for the expert advice and how to do it in a way that you're not redoing this in a couple of years because you haven't done it properly for climate change or in those aspects. Yeah. So it's I don't know if you have many companies down on this end of Canada in the Atlantic provinces that you deal with. Primarily, we've been dealing with Dillon Consulting for a lot of our projects, but it does get very costly when you're putting plans together and just to even see if you can do certain projects. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with trying to get this together. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ruth Ann. Appreciate that. Yeah, we have a solid base of expertise in Atlantic Canada, specifically in Nova Scotia, I would say, and we're also working with the Atlantic Infrastructure Managers Network, which I'm sure you know, Matt.
Yeah. Matt DeLong.
And So
Yeah.
we continue to work with Matt to both bring in that Atlantic lens expertise and find more wonderful projects like those that you're delivering.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah, and just to also raise, Ruth Ann, you brought up a good point, which is that we're looking for expertise across the country, and so we will be opening up our portal for more intakes for experts. So if there are folks that you're working with, firms that you think are doing great work in your own communities, please do let them know about this. We are looking to continue to grow. Once we've done processing this current intake, we're looking to grow that still. So please do let climate experts in your community know about it.
okay.
And just we have a couple question in the chat first on, are communities able to submit service requests for multiple projects? I would say yes. We will work with you to figure out if we can potentially bundle them under one contract, or if there's a multi-stage approach. One now, another later. So I would say yes. Submit them, and we'll talk to you about how best to prioritize and get the expertise to you. We also have a note from Rick. Thank you for sharing this town of Grand Bay, St. John River flooding and the impacts on infrastructure. We have a very similar project in St. Stephen, where they have a waterfront trail and facilities that were impacted by a flood, I think, last year. And we're currently working with them on a scope to, in the very early stages of the project, develop a suite of options and some climate risk analysis that can support decision making and long-term management of the riverbank there.
Yeah, I just want to build off the point that Ruth Ann made a few minutes ago, which is really pertinent to the point you were making, Matt. If you do have a river walk or a pedestrian bridge that gets washed out in a big storm, rebuilding it the same way, you're likely going to get it washed out again. So doing some climate analysis to understand how much you need to raise that so that it is protected for the future is really important. We don't have enough money going around for infrastructure to just replace things every few years. So understanding how much it needs to be raised for the future is a great part of what this service can offer. Bringing in experts to evaluate the specific climate conditions on the ground in your community, and then making recommendations for how to build so that your infrastructure is resilient to those things, whether it's wildfires, or flooding. So thanks for raising those points, Ruth Ann.
And one other question from the chat, just what sort of documents are required to show council supports the project? Will a capital budget do? Yes, in short, a capital budget would do. If it's a project that's included, and if you have a climate adaptation strategy and it says make your fire hall more resilient, that would be effective for us as well. We don't need a specific decision on the project necessarily. It just needs to be in a strategy and a plan somewhere approved. So that's perfectly fine.
But Matt, I think I just heard someone trying to chime in. Was someone chiming in?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And if I may just ask, at what stage would municipality be considering applying through your services? Is it is it pre-design stage? Is it post-design stage? Trying to understand. Like, we have a one in particular project that's and I'm not involved on the design team, but my understanding is we're going to a design Schedule B design shortly, and it's for an arena retrofit and expansion. Now, I've talked to our manager of our director of facilities, and he, along with the design team and the designer, talked about like heat loss recovery from
Oh
the
yeah,
ice plant, right? Which
definitely.
is you know, a logical place to start. However, the cost of just the duct work and that infrastructure to implement was about $1 million estimate on what is about a $10 million project. So um, the costing in particular kind of scares a lot of municipalities away, in particular because then, you know, they're looking at, for $1 million we could have, you know, 2 more change rooms or whatever the you know the options may be, as opposed to looking at, you know, what the cost benefits would be over a longer period of time.
I can jump in. That's a really interesting project. We actually did a similar heat exchange project, City of Vancouver, between a high school and a rec center. They had a pool and an ice rink, so they could exchange heat. But so that's definitely a viable option to explore. But to the question you were asking about what stage of the project it should be, and we're working with communities that are at the beginning stage, and so we're helping them with siting. So looking at flood risks and other risks that they might see if they're siting a project, all the way to doing energy efficiency, helping a community to evaluate 7 municipal buildings to look at what the best energy efficiency measures might be to explore. So everything from very, very beginning to projects that are built and are now looking for retrofits. So anywhere in that stage, you know, if we can help to bring in climate expertise to advise and provide options, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So in your case, Fernando, you know, we could likely bring in some expertise on that particular strategy, but or some expertise to look at multiple options to achieve some of the objectives that you're looking at, including kind of pricing some of them out. So yeah, I think that seems like a viable engagement where we could add some value.
Okay, great, thanks.
And looks like Shane wanted to add something in the chat there, Matt, about Stantec having a funding team to help fund some projects that they work on. So thanks for that, Shane. If you don't see that in the chat, it's worth seeing that note there. Other questions, comments? Fernando, I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Yep, great. Any other specific situations that people are thinking about and wondering whether this initiative might be able to help? Nothing?
Okay. Well,
Maybe
yeah,
maybe
hearing none, I think we can close it off, unless you had something else to add, Sadhu.
no, well, yes, I guess. I guess what I'd say, folks, if you do have something that you're considering, we really the intake process. I mean, Matt kind of said this at the beginning. Our intake process is very, very simple. It's like a 15-minute process. And so I encourage you to get in the queue, and that allows us to start looking at it and set up a call, and we'll write up a scope, see if that works for you. We'll find ways to make your project fit. And you know, we really, as Matt said, this is not an application process. It's a submission process to get us going down the road to see how we can help. And we're really, you know, HICC has been really clear with us that we want to find ways to help everyone that comes in the door. And so, you know, we really encourage you to get in the queue, and then we can set up a call and start working together.
Thank you, Sadhu. And yeah, our website is climatereadycanada.ca. We'll follow up with everyone at the conclusion of this. You'll get our slide deck and information on the service. And yeah, I'll just reiterate it. Would love for you to submit through our website, and love to start working with you. And the projects we've heard here today, I think, sound fantastic. So looking forward to being able to move things forward and work with you.
Can I say one last thing, Matt, before we all go?
Please.
at the very beginning of your presentation, you mentioned the ICLEI platform, Climate Insights. And I guess I just maybe a closing plug for those of you that are really new to this topic and you're kind of trying to figure out what might be the climate risks in your area or what might be some strategies. They've built a really great tool, and they're going to be evolving it over time. But I would really encourage you to check it out. It's the kind of mapped climate risks for different areas, and they've got a suite of tools that you could consider. And it's in the chat now. Thanks. Some marvelous person has put it in there, probably Eva. So anyway, it's really worth browsing that to generate ideas for infrastructure that you may have in some ways that you could be thinking about how to integrate these ideas. Okay, Matt, that's all
Awesome.
for me.
That's it. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll give you some time back. Appreciate your attendance, and reach out if you have any questions or thoughts. So thank you so much for attending.